This video will guide you through the 15-mark questions on the new A-level business specification. You'll be given an insight into the specific demands of this style of evaluate question, how the 15-mark evaluate question differs from other types, what different approaches would answer the question effectively, what does a good chain of reasoning look like, what are sophisticated concepts and how to use them, what is well-supported evaluation and how to provide it. Let's start with, what are the demands of the 15-mark question? Students need to analyze two options that might achieve a certain outcome. Those two analyses will form the basis of a judgment about which is the most appropriate for the particular business scenario presented. In the decision-making 15-mark questions, the two options will be given to the students. In the problem-solving 15-mark questions, it is up to the students to generate two relevant options that might be appropriate. For the problem-solving questions, both of the options need to be considered in the context of the particular problem or situation. Therefore, selectivity will be necessary when selecting relevant solutions. This will recognize that problem-solving is a key business skill and allows students to explain why the options they're suggesting could be effective. How does the 15-mark evaluate question differ from other types of questions? The need for a clear judgment separates this question type from 6-mark questions and reflects that a third of the marks are for AO4 evaluation. 15-mark questions are also going to differ from 9-mark questions in that they may involve the generation of valid strategies or methods of achieving an outcome, involve selectivity about the best ways to achieve an outcome, as opposed to generally being given the start and end points, may be particularly effectively answered through the use of sophisticated concepts. More on these later. These questions need an overarching judgment. That is one that acknowledges that different methods will each have their own merits and drawbacks, but that the business needs to make a balanced decision. Should be based on a careful weighing up of both options that have been produced. While the 15-mark questions are clearly different from the 6-mark ones in that they require judgment, they will also require more creative solutions to be generated, rather than students usually being presented with those options, as happens for 9-mark questions. A further distinction from the 9-mark questions is the need to consider two different options in detail, whereas the 9-mark questions will usually be satisfied by analyzing whether one particular option will achieve a certain outcome. This has implications for the judgment, which will need to consider why the merits of one option outweigh those of the other, or why the drawbacks of one make another the more viable option. The nature of the 15-mark questions in particular gives scope to students to display their creativity and showcase their problem-solving and decision-making skills. This might excite some, but others could see it as more of a challenge. So how can you support those students? Different approaches would answer the question effectively. We mentioned creativity. It is important that students can approach any particular question in the way that suits them best, provided they meet the clear requirements set out in the question. For example, here are two options to be fully considered. One should be selected and recommended over the other, but there will be multiple ways of achieving this. Here are two different but valid ways of structuring a response. Analyze the benefit of one option. Allowing increased remote working could benefit Netflix, particularly by supporting its aim of a diverse workforce, because this could make jobs more attractive or accessible to more people. Analyze the benefits of the second option in a similar way, making sure that the links to the desired goal of raising motivation are again clearly explained. Provide a judgment on whether option 1 or 2 is best by pointing out the difficulties with option 1 that would be reduced or overcome if option 2 is selected. In this instance, the conclusion needs to have a relatively detailed explanation of the drawbacks of a particular option to support the recommendation. Some students might prefer to identify those weaknesses in their suggested options as they analyze them. Analyze the benefits and highlight a difficulty with option 1. Repeat for option 2. Make a judgment about why the difficulties or drawbacks of one option are less fundamental to achieving Netflix goals of improved motivation than those of the other. For example, home working might present too great a departure from a culture where collaboration is crucial, and that with a focus on being excellent team players, it is difficult to achieve this with staff working remotely. Therefore, the chosen option could be through even greater use of teamworking, and that is only feasible if employees are able to physically interact. There's no single ideal structure. The key is to identify and explain the strengths and weaknesses of each option, and use them to form a judgment relevant to the business case. The assessment objective with the second highest relative importance is AO3 analysis. So, what does a good chain of reasoning look like? There is a requirement in the 15-mark questions levels of response grid for analysis to be well developed, and this will happen naturally as a result of a chain of reasoning effectively linking the suggested option to the desired outcome. The AO3 skill needs to be built on the foundations of knowledge and understanding being applied to the particular context of the business. Making use of relevant facts about an aspect of knowledge, AO1, for example, that remote working can facilitate autonomy, can be a good starting point to analyze why that particular option may improve motivation. Integrating a reference to how remote working could feasibly be operated specifically by Netflix. For example, because so many of its employees are technical and involved in work that is performed largely at a computer, this will help to build more relevant detail into the answer. Finally, well-developed links in the analytical chain will come from explanations of how specific mechanisms operate in an order, therefore linking cause with effect. Having identified a relevant method of motivating staff, the explanations about how it would operate can integrate the relevance of specific aspects while explaining how and why they work. Remote working allows people to do their job from home or any location that suits them best. AO1. Giving people a choice over where they work can allow autonomy. AO1. This fits the culture where Netflix allows and expects people to make the right decisions. AO2. Autonomy may be particularly valued by high-skill staff who make up a large percentage of Netflix workers. AO2. It motivates because they understand they have choices about how to achieve their goals. AO3. Which can make them more productive, as they may be able to spend hours that would alternatively be spent commuting, contributing valuable time to projects. AO3. Which would satisfy their wish to achieve the best possible outcome for them personally, as well as for Netflix. Heightening motivation. As you can see, it is the interweaving of the first 3 AO skills that is the basis of well-focused analysis. However, there is something that can elevate this sort of response further. What are sophisticated concepts and how to use them? A sophisticated concept is a theory, model, or framework that provides academic support for a proposed action. There is a list of these available in the specification, but that list is not exhaustive. As with all aspects of a response, a feature of the marking guidance is that all relevant content should be credited. Sophisticated concepts can be used to demonstrate knowledge of key theories and explain how they support a particular proposal. By displaying understanding of how a relevant theory could be applied to this particular scenario, students can demonstrate selectivity and some support for their later judgment. In this example, it motivates because they understand they have choices about how to achieve their goals. AO3. Maslow might see this as being self-actualization because Employees have freedom about how to manage their own schedules. This method of motivation can satisfy our innate human drive to choose our own path to contributing to the fulfillment of a wider team objective, which can make staff more productive, as they may be able to spend hours that would alternatively be spent commuting, contributing valuable time to projects. The addition of some analysis of Maslow's hierarchy really does help it to be well developed. What's more, the use of that sophisticated concept might also provide scope for later balance to be added, perhaps in a conclusion, about the need for other levels of the hierarchy to have already been met in order for self-actualization to be possible. By linking the fact that home workers might lack some sort of Maslow's sense of belonging due to not being able to have daily contact with their colleagues, a balance can be introduced into any judgment. This video has shown the various parts that can be built up to construct a good 15-mark response. In a similar way, everything that precedes the student's judgment should have been the building blocks that underpin a supported judgment. What is well-supported evaluation and how to provide it? The AO4 component must weigh up both options and provide a justified recommendation. This is likely to be presented in the final conclusion, which will only be as strong as the justifications supporting each option. The evaluative skills lie in recognizing the relative merits of one strategy over another. This needs to take into account the needs or situation of the business to be really effective. This doesn't mean a conclusion should repeat the earlier points. Instead, it can be used to compare and contrast relative strengths and weaknesses. Another way of providing this counterbalancing aspect could be through examining which factors relevant to the business could dictate whether an option should be chosen. For example, Netflix's decision on whether home working is more motivating than increased opportunities for team working may depend on whether remote work would actually reduce the current level of collaboration. By considering the relationship between the two options, the judgment can then evaluate whether remote working would undermine the pre-existing motivational benefits of the already high levels of collaboration linked to teamwork. In this way, an overarching judgment is possible because it is directly contrasting the two options required by the question. But do remember that the better the quality of the earlier analysis, the more informed any judgment can be. What is crucial is that the conclusion is coherent, relevant to the scenario, and supported.